And please join me in welcoming Sarah to the stage.
All right, I'm back. Here we go. All right, so, it's interesting listening to Terry and Matt. And it's interesting, by the way, while we were sitting here, the president tweeted out that he's not going to close the border, so the pressure worked. So, and this is really important. Our voice in retail has to speak louder. I want you to take notes because I want you to be reciting these facts over and over and over to people, because the more they know the actual impact of this industry on the economy, then they can actually take fundamental decisions that are based on reality. All right, and we all talk about lies versus reality. Now, my mommy taught me that I better tell the truth, so I use data, right? And this is how I think about it, right? Come on, it is what it is. My mom was an ethics professor. I had nowhere to slip, okay? So you get this. It's just the way it is. So my title, Innovation in the Economy. All right, and I know you'll say, oh, great, it's another one of these talks, let me snooze. Well, what I want to talk about is to understand why we win in the U.S., all right? Because there's all these questions about where we are in the economic cycle and when's it going to end. I always get the question, Sarah, when's the next recession? What about never? What says it can't be never, right? If you think about what both Terry and Matt said with respect to 70% of the economy being retail sales and consumption. 70%, that means all the people who are working there, right? But remember the fundamental change, right? So in 2008, Terry, I don't quite agree with how Terry, categorized it, because really what it was a repeat of the Depression of 1928, in which my mother was born. And the interesting thing about that generation that was born then is they never learned to consume, because it was so amazing, the wealth loss. And we had the same thing in 2008, where we had permanent wealth loss. Remember, GM went bankrupt, Fannie, Freddie, all these companies. And we had a fundamental change in consumption and behavior because of the fact of what happened. And I would argue and postulate to you that you're not actually taking that into account in your businesses enough. We say it up here, but I want you to go back to your businesses after the conference. No leaving now, right? But after the conference, and really sit down with your key people and say, are we really set up for today's economy? And we don't have time to morph, all right? There's no steps to be taken. It's a leap, because it's a permanent change, and that's what I really want you to understand, all right? By the way, I will give an update on my cost center. That's my daughter, so we'll get there. All right, fast on the clicker here. There we go. All right, so there's going to be 4 things I'm really talking about. The employment perspective, right? Because that was the other thing we learned in 2008. All right, we decided that we no longer were going to live by OPM. Who knows what OPM is? Other people's money, okay? So the reality is that's what we did in 2006 and 7. Why the heck should we use our own when we can borrow somebody else's? Woo! All right, so now we're back to spending our own money. So why does it matter? If you have a job, you spend. If you don't have a job, you don't spend. So we're looking at employment. The retail sales perspective, where are we? All right, what are we buying? What are we thinking about here? Inflation, right? We'll keep looking for that thing, right? And interest rates. It matters, right? It really matters, interest rates, because it matters in how people behave. All right, employment. All right, where are the students? Wave your hands. I only come here because of you, first of all. All right, so secondly, I want you to realize that you all better get a job quick, all right? Because we are in a full employment in this country. This is full employment. And one of the greatest things for everybody who's looking for a job is that my generation forgot to have children. All right, what does that mean? It means that the baby boomers who are retiring, we don't have enough kids to actually replace us in the workforce, which means for all of you looking for a job, graduates to be, that you will get a job, all right? And in fact, you can demand the terms. Now, I talked yesterday in class about how to negotiate. If you have questions, see me afterwards. All right, but the point to understand here is this is going to continue. But it's going to get into a crisis point for retail. And let me be clear, here's the other side of this, right? Because of the fact that we know that this is going the way where unemployment will keep dropping, there will be more demand for your existing labor. So obviously they're going to want more money. And we're going to have to think about what we actually pay our retail workers. Now, the good news for you is all the academic research, putting on my geek University of Chicago hat here, shows that, in fact, raising minimum wage actually does not lose jobs, does not decrease jobs, all right? So, and raising wages doesn't. But the interesting thing, the other part of academic research shows, is that if you actually look at what sort of incentives people want, it's not necessarily always money. How about flexibility of hours or scheduling of hours? You know, Starbucks came out and said they were going to be better at scheduling the hours where the person who closed didn't necessarily open in the morning. And understanding predictability in retail hours, that's a really valuable tool if you can give that to people. Because why? They have lives. Thinking about it, right? So it's an important thing to think about. What are the other incentives? I would argue one of the most valuable things that a company could do in the retail sector who actually has maybe multiple stores in the city is open a child care facility. How valuable it would be for people to know that they had a safe place to put their children that was affordable, that also met the hours that retail actually worked, right? Retail, you know, in other words, this is a really critical thing. You know, Terry said he just got back from Australia. One of the crazy things is they mandate that retail close at 6 o'clock, and they wonder why sales are dropping. And I'm like, because people work, right? And so they're not done at 6 o'clock. So these are the types of things. But this is going to continue. So there's a double-edged sword that we in the industry must really start to address and think about. So think about your incentives. Think about how you're going to bring in labor. How are you going to keep that labor? It's very expensive to get new people. So it's an important thing. All right, and obviously you can see it continues to drop on a quarterly basis. I fully expect this to happen. And in some areas, it's even very different, right? And where is that? That's urban areas. So everybody has talked about this move to cities, and it's a critical thing, and I'm going to talk about it a bit more. So your location of where you are is critical. But the real issue, it goes back to 2008. Remember I told you we had permanent wealth loss. So you've heard me say this before, but I really want to hammer this home, is that the point is we like our family and friends again. So all the things we can do to spend more time with them is everything that drives our decisions. It drives who we work for. It drives the hours we want to do. It drives exactly what we buy, right? And so these things are really critical. So understanding people's lifestyles is going to be critical. All right, inflation. Everyone keeps saying there's no inflation. Now, with due respect to Chairman Powell, I don't know if any of you have been to the grocery store lately, but there's a bit of food inflation out there, right? Everything costs more at the grocery store. So we've got to think about that. That's inflation, right? The second bit of inflation is we've seen gasoline prices go up. If you haven't noticed, Venezuela has imploded, and so that's a problem. They were a big source of oil. Iran is back in Sanctionville, so their oil's not there. Now, why we are pumping, by the way, did any of you know that the United States is now the biggest oil producer in the world? If you didn't, you should actually applaud the shale industry because they've done an amazing job, right? And you should. I'm telling you, this is what employs a lot of people and buys a lot of stuff, right? But the reality is that we've seen a creep up because of exogenous circumstances that have nothing to do with the U.S., right, here. And by the way, driverless cars aren't here yet, right? Electric cars, nice idea. Tesla, go for it, but not there, okay? So the reality is we still consume gas. It's 17% of people's consumption. So as that price goes up, we have less to buy on other things. So it's one of the things to watch because inflation is biting. Now, the greatest news last year was that wages for the lowest income Americans went up faster than anybody else, right? They need to catch up, folks. Why? Because you know why the rich are rich? They don't spend. Unfortunately, we'd like them to spend more. They really don't. They save. Let's go spend, right? But the middle class and the lower class, they spend all the time. So the more that they have income and their income increases, that comes in. But we have to combat because let's be clear. We are seeing clear inflation come in from the tariffs now. While Matt was correct in saying that we didn't put all the tariffs on China we could, let's not forget we have not lifted the tariffs on Canada, even though we reached an agreement with them and with Mexico. GM announced it cost them $1 billion last quarter in steel. And I can tell you, because I, on the side, do commercial real estate, we are having real challenges in our building costs because of all the lumber from Canada. So if I can pressure you to pressure one thing that helps all of us is to get these tariffs lifted, because it's easy to put tariffs on. It's rare they come off, if you look back in history. So we need to get these off, all right? So it's not enough to just say we came to an agreement. The tariffs have to come off. They are hurting every single business in this country, and then that hurts your buyers. That hurts the retail consumption, which then hurts the U.S. economy. That's a self-inflicted wound. That's dumb, okay? That's an own goal if you play hockey, right? And so we don't need to do that one. All right. See, inflation goes up, goes down. All right. Retail sales. Here's what we really are for. Here's what I live for, right? Notice I say sales driven by the experiential economy. Now, the reason I mention this is we really have permanently changed on this. In fact, did you know that the houses that are being built in the United States now are 780 square feet smaller than they were before? Again, we don't have any babies, so there's no one to fill that fifth bedroom, all right? So we don't need that, right? And we are not hotels, okay? I am not doing the Airbnb thing either, right? I'm with Terry, all right? But the reality is we are buying smaller homes. The 3-bedroom home is much more selling than the 5-bedroom home. And by the way, those of you who have a McMansion still, let me be very clear, you are going to own that into perpetuity, all right? Because millennials do not want that house, all right? And to be very, very clear, enjoy it. It'll be a nice museum someday. It'll go with all the china that you never use, okay? Right? Come on, we know this, right? Sad, all right? But the point is, the economy is experiential. And you've heard me talk about Cameron Village in Raleigh, North Carolina, which is where I'm doing my real estate development. But one of the most interesting things, if you haven't been there, you got to see this. First of all, second growing city in the country. But more importantly, Cameron Village is an inside-out mall. And there's literally only 2 stores and restaurants in this mall that encompasses 6 blocks, right, that actually are chain stores that you would know. There is no parking space to be found at Cameron Village all day long or into the evening, and everybody lives in townhomes around there and walks to this. So all the restaurants are full all the evening, every single night, and the weekends. Think about that. That's what retail is. So it's thinking about novel concepts, picking up local that supported that. Now, Cameron Village has been around for almost 30 years now. They have just continued to evolve it all the time. This is what I'm thinking about. So even if you have an established retailer, you need to think about, how am I going to bring that experience in? Terry talked about, he's deadly right. We need to understand going into the store. This is the critical thing. So everyone says, I hate online. I don't hate online, all right? I just want to be clear. There's another part of online he didn't mention. Online's for the rich. Let's be clear that over 60% of Americans do not have $600 in savings in this country. They do not. A lot of people don't have credit cards, debit cards, are unbanked, but they spend every single day. So we need to understand that store experience needs to continue to be enhanced. But then there's me, all right? And I've been very fortunate in my life. But I darn well love that cost center of mine, and this is where all my money's going, is taking her out shopping, right? So we have this experience together. Now, by the way, this is something, if you haven't thought about, I've talked about this before, but I really want to emphasize. My generation is the richest generation ever in the history of this planet. And we are bound and determined to go down, continuing to spoil our children like they are actually 3 years old, even though mine is almost 28, okay? So let's be clear. You need to be marketing to me for my cost center, right? Because I love spending on her. It's the most insane, unexplainable economic consequence, but it's true. So the point is, I want you to think about the experience. It's got to be forefront when we come in there. It's got to be how we think about everything when we walk in the store. Is it clean? Is it put together? Can I find things? Is there a human to help me? Right? So I appreciate all the technology, but doesn't sometimes technology not work? Doesn't Wi-Fi go down? Don't those things happen? So a human who could actually say, actually on the 2nd floor is where home furnishings are, helpful, right? So these types of things I really, really want you to get back to, because the more we can get back to that simplistic way of thinking about retail, to understand what it is, because what am I trying to do? I'm trying to accelerate the velocity of transactions. How does an economy do better? It does better because the money is circulating faster, right? Because the faster you make money, the more you can pay your people, you pay your suppliers faster, all of that goes in, and that money comes right back into the economy. So the more we can increase this velocity, the better off the economy does. And guess what? Then we don't need to worry about recessions. Why am I not worried about a recession? Let me go back to this, all right? I'm going to come to it later as well, but why? Because the reality is 70% of us work for small businesses. Only 12% of what we do in this country is exports, right? So now it's big companies, so they get a lot of press, right? And Terry talked about press, right? And there's nothing wrong with that, but the point is they aren't the biggest employers. You already know that. That's the point. Small business employs people, and small business not being dependent upon what's going on in the rest of the world. And the rest of the world doesn't look pretty. Trust me, it's not pretty out there, right? But we don't care, because as long as we have a job, as long as we are happy and see our families, take a vacation once a year maybe, twice. All right, we need to stop working so hard, by the way. But the point is to really understand, as long as we're happy and getting to do those things, we're good, and we'll just keep spending. And if we keep spending, what happens? No recession, right? So it's a different way of thinking about this. All right, retail sales. I want to be really clear about this. Now, you saw that plunge in December, right? And I don't agree with it, all right? Now, first of all, let's be clear. You all know I was at MasterCard. MasterCard had actual transactions, right? Has actual transactions. And the government surveys to get their numbers. So let's be clear. A survey, I'll always lie, right? Someone comes to me in an airport, did you spend any money in this country when you visited? Sure, $1,000, right? I didn't even get a minute to shop. But it doesn't matter. You don't want to say no. You want to don't sound like you're not participating, right? So the point is it's not the same as the actual data. That being said, let's not underestimate the mentality of what happened in this country of that government shutdown, and how it cascaded through to people's mind. Even though it affected directly, about 5 million people, mentally it went through right during the most important time of the year, right? And it lasted a long time. And that had a real impact. And the other thing to understand is what we did spend during that period, we always take a break in the first quarter. So I'm not worried when I'm seeing a bit of a pullback. Now, I will say there's no doubt that there has been a bit of surprise, especially from people like in New York, New Jersey, places like that, when they've actually filed their taxes. And if you haven't yet, enjoy. All right? But understand, there's been some surprise by people because the tax cut wasn't as big for a lot of people as it was for others, right? So it's not an equal world, and we know that, and Mom taught me that too when I was growing up. But the difference is we've seen a bit of pullback in some of the spending. But I think it's natural, all right? And I'm not concerned because, again, we've watched this wages continuing to go up, and that will flow through, right? And that's the big thing. But one of the big problems, all right, let's not forget, where I disagree with the Fed violently is, all right, you should never say you're not going to raise rates during a year. And here's why. When you raise rates, you are signaling to the rest of the world and to the United States that the economy is strong. That's the message. It's not that we see runaway inflation or whatever. It's that we feel confident that we're just trying to manage things and manage the growth that's ongoing. To sit there and say you're not going to raise for the entire year, to me, is like if any of you are old enough to remember Lost in Space and the robot going, danger, danger, Will Robinson. That's exactly what I felt when I heard him say that. What does he see and know that I don't see in the economy? Because I see people working, I see people being able to invest in their families, be able to take vacations. If you try to go to Disney World right now, you can't get a spot, right? It's jammed. So we know that those types of things are working well. So I think, interestingly enough, that while interest rates are where they are, I would like to see the message from the Fed be more measured to really respect what we actually see going on in the economy. So while sales have gone back a little bit, look at this trend over time. Let's take a little bit and not look so micro month to month and really think about the fact of where it's going. Yeah, it's coming off a little bit, but look at this acceleration since 2015. and understand that we are leaning in. We are confident. We believe what we're doing. And it all goes back to employment. And all goes back to people having confidence in their family, right? But remember, what's the other permanent change? 2 people in a family will always be working from now on. We will never risk that one of us would lose our job and go through 2008 again. It's a permanent mental change in behavior. So we need to be more accommodating, not over our labor force, but also of our customers, right? So maybe you have a few people less on at 10 o'clock in the morning or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, respecting that people are working, and maybe you stay open a little bit later, a few nights during the week, to really accommodate people so they don't feel like they all have to rush in on Saturdays. And make certain you have enough staff on Saturday and Sunday, because we are doing life management at that time. Really important thing. Holiday sales this year, I just wanted to point this out. By the way, this is MasterCard's data. What's really important to recognize here is that they actually did increase. So sales during that period of Black Friday to the end through the Christmas season, right, actually were up 5.1%, and online was up double digit. But I want to recall, if you all remember my comments from last year, every year holiday online goes up. Why? Because you're giving the gift to someone else and the return is not your problem. Remember that. They always fall back right after in January and February because of the fact that we actually have to do the returns, and it's a time management issue again. So what continues to grow online is a lot of commodity products, in the sense that you know for sure you won't return it, or you're buying another pair of shoes to replace one that you lost, but you know that shoemaker fits you perfectly, right? So we've got to continue to make certain that if you talk about using technology, let's make the size charts better online. Let's make things so people really fit. So again, you are being a convenience and a service to people. And that will increase your online sales, all right? Notice that electronics are down. A lot of people always keep feeling that they're losing sales. We have reached saturation point on electronics in the United States. Not in every other country, but clearly here, all right? And I think obviously our friends at Apple found that out with the price point on the $1,000 phone. And we can actually see them rejiggering into a service model because of it, right? And I think that this is what we'll see. Now, we saw clothing finally up. Now, you have heard me say that basically we've been naked the last 3 years and haven't bought any clothes, and it was pretty amazing. But still, for 2018, women's clothes were negative for the entire year. So think about that. Remember, have you looked at what you wear to work every day? How many of you have to wear a suit and tie every day? Not many people, right? So if you think about it, it's that casualization. Now, I personally, how much I hate yoga pants, all right? And I do, because I fly a lot, and that's now what everybody wears on a plane. It is not a good look, ladies, okay? All right, but this being said, we know Lululemon's sales, right? So we know it's obviously an important thing, all right? But the key is to think about, what are they telling you? So if you're thinking about merchandise, and as Terry was saying, and getting the right merchandise, let's think about, what are we doing in this athleisure nice way? How do we bridge it into sportswear, as it used to be called, to really make comfortable clothes that people can wear and people want to wear? That's what we've got to be doing. Then you'll see the purchasing. Other than that, forget it. It's not going to be there, right? We just don't have to dress up very much anymore, which is kind of a shame. All right, death of retail. I don't buy it at all. Right? And we were talking about, Best Buy. What a great example of a turnaround, and how brilliant is it that we all use the Geek Squad, and we really understand, and regardless of where we could get a TV online, we still go in there to check them out. That they've actually figured out the solution, and also putting stores within the store, and all the way that they've actually reinvented that whole model. We like it. We're overstored. There's no doubt about it, right? We've known that for a long period of time. But the issue is, it's not dead. What's dead is going into a store that offers no experience, nothing different, all right, or something that we don't buy anymore. That's dead. And we really do vote with our dollars, and we move. So thinking about that, I think, is absolutely critical. All right, but what are we doing? So one of the interesting things is the housing crisis, that came about in 2008 and 2009. The interesting thing is, we'll never get back to almost 72% of people owning their homes. Because we've actually fundamentally changed and think about wealth in a different way. So we actually are happy to think about liquid wealth, owning stocks, owning other things that actually contribute to our wealth. So owning a home is not necessarily the biggest thing, and we actually see growth of rentals outpacing growth of ownership. And I really believe that that will continue to be the case. It's not just affordability, which is what gets the press. It's really a choice. Because people want to close the door, let mowing the lawn be someone else's responsibility and get on with their lives. It's a quality of life and lifestyle change. But one of the things we are doing is, for those of us who do own homes, is we are investing in that existing home. And that's why you see building materials, garden equipment, and supplies. It's about the experience, that we actually feel like we're Bob Vila, right? And we go in there and we're like, we can do this. I can make green things grow, right? I can't. Everything dies in my yard if I touch it. But the point is, I still spend a ton of money at Home Depot in aspirational spending, and then I go to Lowe's thinking it'll be a different experience. My plants still die. But the point is that I'm there, like, with that experience. Next, food and beverage stores. But make no mistake about it, we do not cook anymore. We do not. We are now 48.8% restaurant versus grocery. Millennials, 52% restaurant, 48% grocery. Generation Z only uses a microwave. So think about that. Those are facts, data, hard data. So the reality of what does that mean? It means make a bigger deli section, right? So we think we're cooking. Right? Right? I cooked, you know? But thinking about those type of things, understanding the point that maybe within a grocery store you actually have a restaurant. I don't know. Think outside the box, but understanding what is it again saying? It's we care to spend time with each other. It's not about the cooking and the cleaning up. It's about the time we're spending together with our friends and family. That's the most important. So focus in on that. Health and personal care, all right, we are living forever. This is the great news. That means we need more health products, all right? So that's the bad news, right? So I think it's an interesting thing, but it will continue to be a category that continues to improve. Great margins in it, so it's also very important from a retailer's perspective. And then again, furniture, home furnishings and things like that. Again, investing in our existing homes. That shows the strength of the economy again. So why am I'm not worried about a recession when I'm watching how much spending is going on as we're, out with the old sofa, in with the new, out with the new throw pillows, Those types of things are going on. And then general merchandise stores. That's the time management. That's the value add they have for us that is exceptional and so important for us to think about. Right? And a very, very key thing. So you can see, look at these categories though. You don't see clothing in there. You don't see shoes. You don't see the traditional things we think about when we talk about retail. So remember, less is more. Remember the size of the house being smaller. Remember, so there's not a lot of tchotchke going around. However, what I will tell you that's hilarious is that self-storage space is growing exponentially, so we won't get rid of the crap that we've already got. So we just throw it in storage. Interesting, right? But what was the number one gift for the third year in a row? Trip with the family, correct. So for third year in a row, the holiday gift that everybody gave each other was a trip. So how do you think about that as a retailer? Well, how about figuring out where everybody goes? And because we know when people go on vacation, they spend one full day shopping because they don't have time otherwise in their life. And remember, only 40% of us have a passport. We're not leaving the island. So therefore, that spending is in the United States, right? So very exciting to think about where do people go, right? And it's a very important way of saying, how can I capture even more here, right? How do I think about it differently? All right, interest rates. All right, you're going to hate me, but they really are too low. All right? Because again, I want to really indicate to the rest of the world how strong our economy is. Right? And the rest of the world, unfortunately, doesn't always say nice things about us anymore. And so an important thing to recognize is that we're still the big, bad United States, and we're still the strongest and biggest economy in the world by far, and we need to acknowledge that, and interest rates help us. So they're going up. I had predicted there'd be 2 raises this year. There will not be a cut, all right? Some people are talking about cut. There is nothing that justifies a cut, Nothing, all right, in the data, all right? Unless we have Armageddon, all right, there's no cut, all right, going on here. This is the most important. If everyone takes a picture of this slide, I want you to take a picture of this slide. Because we have changed where we live, all right? And it's going to be accelerated because of the tax cut of last year. But I want you to recognize where people are moving, all right? And understand the key thing of who's going up and who's going down. My beloved state of Massachusetts, where I grew up, is in the wrong part of this world, right? Look at New York. New York has a $3 billion shortfall in their budget because of everybody moving out of there, right? So there's 1,000 people a day moving to Florida, and the average age now is 43 in Florida. No more dead people. All right, so I want you to think about that. That's young people who are starting businesses who are there, all right? And it's a very important thing to recognize. You're not sitting there thinking about catering to retirees who are not buying, as Harry mentioned very correctly, the same things, right? And understand. But look at North Carolina, South Carolina. What is going on there, all right? Best cost of living, 30-minute commute as opposed to an hour commute, all right? Lowest corporate taxes in the country are in North Carolina. So understand, this is what you need to think about when you're thinking about location, location, location for your real estate, because we're telling you where physical stores are and that they are leading, and this is where people are spending, but they're only spending if there's humans there. So I want you to really note this map, and I made it even more visible for you. That southeastern part of the country is what? It is the manufacturing belt of the country. All right, and this is where we build all the cars. This is where we build all the light manufacturing for everything else. This goes across the border 8 trillion times. You know, a car goes across the border 7 times back and forth before it's actually made here, right? Very important not to close that border, thank heavens, right? But understanding and appreciating where people are going and where people are leaving from is critical when you're sitting here and thinking about that. Are we overstored? Yes, but where are we overstored? Where are we understored? Where do we think about what's the age? Who are they type of people, right? So, you know, one of the things that just to speak to Raleigh, where I live, is that we're a high-tech and a life sciences capital. So if you think about it, coming in and catering to that type of community and what they spend on and what they need, it's very, very important. Right? It's a very different, very young sort of society with 4 universities right there to support it. So it's a big difference in terms of when you're thinking about what's spending and what's going on there. So it's not the capital of North Carolina, even though it is. It's a high-tech community, and that's a different thing. So the funniest part about this, okay, the #1 city, the Villages, all right, that is where dead people go in Florida. Okay, so, but aside from that, the rest of the things on the map here really show, again, jobs. This is job growth, and this is what really is driving where people are moving. All right, so what's the outlook? Urban clusters. Now, urban clusters can be a suburban area, right? In other words, it's where do we have a group of employers and then people who want to live in the bedroom communities right around that employment. This will continue to be very, very critical, right? And I want you to really think about how can I, with my team, at my business, identify where these clusters are and really appreciate this is how people want to live, because they are defining their lives by not having a long commute to the work. Because again, it takes them away from their family and friends. They are unwilling to do this no matter how much you pay them anymore. And so this is a permanent change. So it's not that everybody's in cities. It's where the jobs are and the urban cluster around that, right? So that's very important. Lifestyle matters. Really, really understand we define ourselves first and foremost by lifestyle, right? And how we think about it. So going back to my cost center, she's living in New York City, and she works for Google, all right? So, and she's in digital advertising. Now, the interesting thing is her lease came up this year, and she could have gone anywhere in the city, right? She's fortunate. She's working hard, which is good. I do not support her. I'm not nice, all right, and in terms of her rent. But the interesting thing is she said, I want to be able to walk to work. So she stayed in the existing building she was, right? Not as fancy, but I want to walk to work. It's a lifestyle decision. I don't want to be dependent on the MTA. So thinking about that when you're thinking about and talking about your consumers, when you're trying to learn information, it's not so much where they're spending, it's like, where are they spending their day is what I want you to be thinking about, right? What are they actually doing during their day? That's the way I want you to think about this. That's the way to go and reach out to them. Because if you can support their lifestyle, assist their lifestyle, make it easier, you will be invaluable in their lives, and they'll be a repeat customer. And then less is more. I want you to appreciate that I think that it's understanding, can I get the really special thing? That's something that's meaningful in my life, right? And I'm not going to have as many of them as I used to do, all right? That's 2007 behavior. Now what it is, it's that special aspirational thing. And I think that's the way to think about it, is how can I help people aspire to things? And especially if it's a good, right? When I'm telling you we're buying more services and more travel and more all those, and restaurants and all that type of spending, but how do I actually think about the one good they really want? And how do I help them achieve that and make it still very important to them? And identifying what it is a critical thing. Okay, so a couple challenges I want to bring up. We are in a global world regardless, all right? And just understand that we can put all the rhetoric out there that we want, but trade is already here, all right? And unfortunately, as you've watched by the Fed and other people, we can see that we do catch a little bit of a cold when the rest of the world is ill. And let me be very clear. While you saw a bit of improvement in a Chinese manufacturing number, that is stimulated and chosen by the government. Their actual economy is slowing. They have 4 times the debt bubble we burst in 2008, all right? And they are having a severe consumption problem, right? And remember, they have basically cut off spending, luxury spending. They really don't want that visible spending anymore. So it's a very interesting evolution in that economy. They've also become the high-cost producer in clothing and other things right now. So they've got a real challenge going on in their economy, which is normal at this point in the growth of their cycle from where they are coming from. It's not normal for them to deal with, right? So don't be too buoyed that everything's perfect because they had one good number, which was very much government pushed. I want to tell you that one of the things I watch is all the boats going in and out of China with what they're carrying, and they're not, for example, building any more cities because we're not seeing iron ore going in there. So those types of things are really changing. So be a bit cautious on that. And let's be clear, this whole mess in the UK is going to affect us, all right? Because it is going to affect Europe, and that does affect the entire world, all right? So we just have to watch and be supportive, and let's just hope they truly vote to reverse the darn decision. Probably one of the dumbest decisions I've ever seen in terms of economic suicide. So let's just hope that perhaps they buy it back. Trade, it is really critical that we clear trade here. But I want you to all take 5 minutes when you get out of here today to send a quick email to your Congress people and literally tell them to put pressure to lift the tariffs, all right? Because this is really something that is so important. We need to get these tariffs off because this really does affect the consumer on every single level because it affects every business. So it's not enough to do deals. I understand why they still are staying on China. They're still negotiating. They're not with Mexico and Canada. Those need to come off. All right? So those are the things. All right. So this I want you to think about really carefully. This is why the U.S. wins. Because we are the #1 creator of intellectual property in the world. And I want you to ask yourself, is your business creating intellectual property? Because that's when you can charge more. Now, intellectual property, by the way, if you've ever done a patent, can actually be a business process. It doesn't have to be a good, all right? We always think of physical goods. So what processes are you creating in your business to bring people in, to help make it special as to the experience that everybody's having? But one of the things to understand is we will keep this lead, all right? And this is what we do really, really well. And this is why we will continue to not have a recession. All right? Because we are creating intellectual property, because we are stimulating through research and development, so make certain your R&D budgets are up there, right? I don't know if people are going to use VR. I think it's a great idea. I'm not certain I'm really comfortable going and trying on clothes with VR. I go to try on clothes because I like to touch them and I like to see how they look, right? But maybe the next generation will be very different in that way. Although, as Terry mentioned, we do see millennials, Matt mentioned, we do see millennials go shopping, and I can tell you over Black Friday, I definitely take my daughter physically shopping. So it's an interesting thing to sort of see. But remember, It's that testing, it's that pushing, it's that creating, it's thinking about innovation. The innovation lab here at the school through the center is the most amazing thing, and I urge all the other businesses who are not supporting this thus far to put some money in here, test and learn with these brilliant students, because I will tell you this will pay off for your business amazingly. So this is another reason why we'll win. So I want you to expect something we haven't seen in the last 10 years, and that's volatility. Things are going to go up and down. We're not used to that. We're used to things just going up. Since once we got through the recession in, say, 2011, we just started going up, 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 you know, maybe a little blip here and there, but basically going up. Things are going to be more volatile now. But I want you to stay the course, right? So think about if you're running a marathon. Not that you do, but just imagine it, right? All right, but think you're running a marathon, and just understand that sometimes you're going up a hill, sometimes you're going down a hill, sometimes you're pushing through headwinds, sometimes you've got a tailwind, right? But the point is you're still going forward to try to reach that conclusion and get that really great looking fake medal, right? So the point to understand is I want you to focus on that long marathon we're in here. Expect some volatility. Continue to create. Keep thinking outside the box and keep focusing that way. And then finally, the most important thing that you all have to do after Friday at noon tomorrow is you have to go shopping. All right? All right? Thank you very much. Do I have time? Okay. All right, so they have cut me off, and I thank you very much. I will be around if anybody has questions later, and thank you very much for your attention.